Hi everyone. I hope that you can all see and hear me okay. Welcome. How is everybody? Hi Lauren. If everyone who's here so far wants to say hi in the chat and let me know where you're listening in from. I just wanted to say I've got the microphone here and I'm aware that my hair might be brushing against it. So if it is, I might just take it off and do you know what? I'm just gonna do this because I think that seems to work the best recently anyway. How are you, Lauren, and how is everybody else? Thanks for joining. Let me see who we have. So I've got four people here that I can see and click on. So we've got Jen from Honolulu. That's awesome. And I love your description. And then obviously we've got Lauren. Oh my God, we have Melissa Manifest. She's a really, really wonderful teacher who I discovered only recently, and I've been listening to her. So I feel so honored that you're at my live because I was very inspired by kind of your most recent live that we're listening to, and I was kind of getting ready for bed at the time, so I wasn't really engaging with the comments much. But I was literally thinking about the fact that I've gone through a similar situation in terms of just going through redundancy with work a couple of months ago, and a little bit in at the deep end, kind of doing things that fuel my passion and purpose more than what drives me sort of financially. So yeah, I just want to say how like meaningful and sort of how much that session resonated with me. So it's great to have you here. And for those of you who don't know Melissa, please give her a follow and yeah, listen to her lives. She's fab. And Melissa, I'd love to connect because you have a very similar energy to me. And then we also have, and I recognized your little picture as soon as it popped up on the bottom, even before I clicked on you. And then we have someone, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but I think it's Asa Marandi, who is another teacher. So I haven't actually been to any of your sessions, but please follow all the teachers on here, guys. And yeah, so today, so normally just a kind of little intro for those of you who don't know me, who haven't been to any of my sessions before. First of all, one of my other favorite teachers who's very supportive and brilliant on here, Blossom Violet, who does kind of relaxing piano music. She's actually live at the same time as me, at the moment, tonight. And so I was gutted to find that out, but it's all good. I'm tilting this down because what I've realized, I'm using this, and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm using this software called Veed.io that basically can take like long form videos, like when I record my lives, and then it can cut it automatically into short, like 30, 45, 60-second clips. And basically, because it makes it kind of portrait mode, it means that I'm very closely cut and in frame. So I'm trying to make it a little bit wider and a little bit longer and a bit further away so that, there's more of the plants and stuff and less of like just my face as a close up. And yes, so for those of you who are new, um, yeah, I know Peterbrook. It is hard to pick between, when our favorite teachers are on. But I'm really grateful that you're here because I saw on Blossom Violet she had like 90 meditators scheduled, and I know she's obviously been going a lot longer than me, so she's got a big following. But if anyone needs to like dip out and spend a bit of time with me and a bit of time with Blossom Violet, I won't be offended because she's amazing. And if I wasn't doing a live, I'd be listening to her as well. So the normal format of these sessions, we pick kind of themes around connection, community, building relationships, like maintaining or, resolving conflict when it comes to personal connections and things like that, misunderstandings. But we also talk about wider things like manifestation, um, spirituality. Last week we were talking about kind of how to heal ourselves and how to sort of break free of repetitive thoughts and mindset. And that was me reading a bit from one of Joe Dispenza's books and sharing my perspective and recent kind of experience with that. And we usually have a theme every week. So I think the theme last week was around like roadblocks to connection and community and, what we can do to overcome them. And then this week, I haven't actually got a theme. I kept it a bit open-ended because usually the themes kind of come to me in the week based on what I've heard, what I've listened to, what I've read. Although there are a few kind of themes that will come up, but there isn't like a clear specific one. So the week before last, we also had um, what was it? It starts with an S. Serendipity, that was it. And there was a lot of serendipitous moments and stories that I'd mentioned that happened to me in the previous week. So those are kind of the themes that came up kind of organically. Today, the one thing that's kind of been coming up for me again and again, there's a few different things. One of them is ego, and that's due to kind of listening to teachers on here, also having friends and people close to me tell me about situations where, they've had like fallouts with friends or things have happened. And I found it really interesting how, when we come from a place of ego and we're responding thinking like, oh, I was the last person to message, and this is something I've talked about before, but when we're thinking like I was the last person to message, so therefore the ball's in their court, etc., and we're not thinking, oh well, actually I want to connect with this person, I want to make sure that I am seeing them soon, um depending on what the bigger priority is, what's more important, our ego can override actually what's higher value to us. So that's something that I've been kind of thinking about, reflecting on a lot recently. And then I was also listening to, there's a teacher on here called Mikhail Patrick Boveners, and he is fantastic as well. He does a lot of sessions around kind of consciousness, spirituality, and a lot of what he talks about is kind of letting go of our ego. And he refers to ego as kind of edging God out, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. And he talks, and I've started one of his courses on here around um I can't remember what it's around. No, it's called Taming the Monkey Mind. That's what it is. And one of the things he talked about in the first session was how, we go from as an infant thinking that we're part, conjoined with our mother and like part of her. And then we become an infant and we kind of realize we're separate from mother. And when we're like, the terrible twos, sort of 3 years old, we're moving away from that, and we're kind of developing our own like child ego, where we realize that we're our own person, and we start to kind of have a bit of like self-importance and things like that, and we think about our feelings and things, and then we realize shortly after that that there's other people around, and we have to like share our toys and things. So those are the kind of things that I've been sort of thinking about. And then also weirdly, which I'll come into as well, the kind of like one thing that's been mentioned a lot or just come up organically is um Marina Abramovich, if anyone knows who she is. She's a really interesting performance artist. So there's quite an interesting documentary on Netflix, and she does a lot of like quite I don't know if the right word is like controversial or like quite challenging, physically and mentally challenging performance art pieces. So as an example, one of them, she sat in a gallery for like, I think it was more than a month on end. And she would just sit there the whole day from open to close, and people would queue up and sit opposite her, and she would make unbroken eye contact with each person, one after another. And sometimes people would like cry, and there'd be really like emotional, strong, intense moments. And another, I'm just checking the microphone light is on. Please let me know if there's any issues with like sound or anything else. Let me know. I think we've been okay the last few sessions. Touch wood. I think I'm touching wood, although the table is, I think it's like artificial wood, so I'm just gonna touch one of these plants. Um, but anyway, so she does these really like quite intense, and I'd say they require a lot of discipline, sort of art pieces. And other ones, so she's also done kind of, she does various like training programs that she hosts, and I think she's in her 70s now. And she teaches people how to, like, for example, stand in a forest for like the whole day, and you don't like drink water, or you don't go to the bathroom, or you're just basically present and really focused on what you're doing, and there's just like a level of discipline, no matter if you're cold, whatever. So there's a lot of different pieces that she does, but she's just someone that's come up quite a lot. I find her really interesting. And there's a quote from her that I read, because there was a time where I was quite interested in her, and I kind of, looked her up, and I'll see if I can find the quote. One moment. So if anyone wants to share anything in the chat or say hello, or if anyone has any like questions or suggestions or things that they want to cover today, please let me know. Just to reiterate, we have done it quite a lot previously, where if someone in the space has a specific question, like they've got a situation with a friend or in their own life, and they'd like to feel kind of seen and heard, or simply get like a perspective from myself or other people in the space, we're quite a kind of warm, sort of encouraging group. So please do share anything that you need support on, or anything that we can help you with today. So I'm just looking for this quote. Give me a moment. Oh, one of my guinea pigs just sneezed. So, she says, hang on. So there's another bit to this quote. I found one part of it, but I know. By the way, the other thing that I was going to say is that when she did this performance art piece where she sat in the art gallery, her partner, her ex from like many, many years ago, who she hadn't seen in a really long time, came and sat opposite her. And that was a really sort of profound and emotional moment. And obviously she wasn't speaking at all. She was just making eye contact with these people. So yeah, one of the things I find really interesting about her, so people kind of talk about how maybe she's a vampire because she looks a lot younger than she is. She's 77. And I'm on a Guardian article, which is where I first found this quote that I really love. And so when their relationship ended, by the way, they did a really interesting performance art piece where they basically both started walking from one end of the Wall of China to the other. So they were each at one end, and then they both basically walked together and met in the middle, and that was kind of the last time they saw each other. So, one moment, I just need to cough. So, I'm looking for this. Okay. So she says, and I love this quote, and it's something that's, when sometimes you just get quotes that stick with you. So Marina Abramovich says, "I'm not attached to a bad day or a good day. We always know after the rain." I'm going to start this again. So Marina Abramovich says, so this was when she was asked what keeps her going after a bad day. "I'm not attached to a bad day or a good day. We always know after the rain, the sun will come. It is a law of nature. When it's a really, really bad day, I take a long bath full of kosher salt and baking soda, soak for 30 minutes, and I feel better." Um, and obviously, the bath part isn't the main bit that resonated with me, but it was But although having a hot bath when you're having a tired or difficult time is super helpful, but the main thing I think that resonated with me was that phrase, a specific phrase. "I'm not attached to a good day or a bad day. We all know that after the rain, the sun will come." And I think that's such an important reminder, because when we are having a bad day, or when things are, a little bit darker or more dreary, or, less than ideal, it's really easy to forget actually that, there is kind of more coming, like better things. So I'm just going to catch up on the comments. So yeah, Melissa, I will definitely reach out to you or drop me a message. And I do follow you on my personal profile, but this is my teacher one. And then, so Asa, you're new here. Are you new as a teacher, or new as a audience participant, or just new to my sessions? Please let us know. And everybody, please follow the teachers that we have on our chat if you're interested in sort of discovering new talent and connecting with new teachers here. And then Gopesh, greetings from motherland India. Stay blessed. Thank you. Appreciate it. And yeah, Mikhail is great, Lauren, isn't he? So Tommy, who always shares little pearls of wisdom, and I think Tommy could very, very well be a teacher on here one day. This is what Tommy had to say. On your mention of ego, my perception of ego is a contraction of being, where the individual, is that meant to say contraction or contradiction? where the individual is trying to be a certain way, perhaps in the hope of looking good or achieving survival in competition with those around them. Importantly, though, the ego is part of the whole and can be seen and accepted. And another way to think about ego and how it works is evident in pain versus suffering. Pain is a sensation that arises in the body that we can bring attention to. Suffering is an attempt to avoid pain by turning attention away, especially with our thoughts and the use of pleasure. Ego mechanisms occur unconsciously, but our awareness can penetrate them. Noticing when thoughts and stories about what is happening arise and being able to move/relax attention back into the body is a great practice for integrating ego. One thing that I have always thought regarding ego, which I don't know if this is kind of a sort of helpful or interesting comment or not. But my feeling is that I love having long hair, and it's not that I tie a lot of my identity to it, but I like having long hair. It makes me feel feminine. Um, I just like it, and I've always had the idea or the thought that if I was to just shave off all of my hair, that actually could be a really interesting way of kind of releasing or reworking or rewiring some or losing some of my ego. I've been advised not to do it, but I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has any thoughts on that, or if there's anything that any of you have done before in a similar way, that kind of with the same thing in mind, basically. And so yeah, let's see. So Tommy's got more wisdom for us, and but Gopesh replied to Tommy. Um, so he said, Gopesh said, Tommy, in our last interaction in the session of Raj, where you told me that if I'm stopping someone doing something, I'm actually becoming that, something along those lines. I appreciate that. So I'm not sure entirely on the context of that, but I would, that's one thing that I've been thinking a lot about actually. I'm just gonna move this 1 second. So I'm just trying to kind of have, as I said, like as much of myself in the portrait mode, sorry, less of myself in when it's in portrait mode, so I can cut it and hopefully get some of the plants in as well. So about Gopesh's comment, so I don't, so when you're saying if you're stopping someone doing something, I'd love a bit more context on that. But I think, one of the things that I've been talking a lot about in recent and previous sessions is the concept of like staying in our lane. And what I mean by that is it's not to do with kind of not, engaging with other people. It's not to do with like being sort of individualistic, but it's more focusing on ourselves and, where we feel that we have like advice or concern or care for other people. I think there's a difference, and this is something that's come up as well in like Mikhail's sessions recently, is that, where we claim to kind of like have care or worry for people, where we worry about people or have concern for people, there's a difference between that and kind of caring and showing people that we care. So kind of what he says, he basically says that, we can show people that we care and we can share our points of view, but ultimately, especially if they're kind of adults, but even if they're our kids sometimes, we need to be able to detach ourselves from telling them what to do or feeling that we know what's best. Because what he said was, he was giving the example of his sisters who were choosing to stay in an area that had a flood and kind of storm risk. So he basically he was saying that, he initially was kind of annoyed and wanted them to kind of, go elsewhere, because he was saying like, oh, his parents have passed away, he's only got his two sisters left, and they were in the same house. So he was saying, he was basically saying to them that, that he wanted them to leave and go somewhere safe, like, and stay with his friends or something. And then he realized, oh, actually, what am I doing? He said, how do I know what's best for my sisters and what, their divine path is and what's meant for them and what's the best thing for their kind of soul's growth? And actually, he stepped back a bit and he more gently just kind of expressed his feedback to them that, oh, I'm concerned about you. is the only reason you're staying like this or whatever. He kind of understood their perspective. And then he said, okay, well, I know that I've told them, what I need to, I've said what I need to say, and, I've done the best I can. And now I need to just trust that they know what's kind of best for them in this situation and that they're following their intuition. And there was like damage to the house and stuff, but ultimately, like, everybody was fine. So that's just kind of one example that he was giving around, letting people do um what they feel is right for them, and us not overstepping. I'm gonna pause quickly to say hi to everybody. Hi Mel. Hi Marula. Lovely to meet you. So just going back to the comments. So yeah, so I will kind of share a bit more around this, like staying in our lane stuff. And there's somebody called Mel Robbins, which I don't know. I don't know if you guys have heard of her, but in recent times, she's been talking about something called the let them theory, and I'll talk about that shortly. I think those kinds of things might be the themes for today. But obviously, if anyone has any questions specifically, or anything that they want support or feedback about, or anything they want to discuss or bring to the table for, like, a group kind of theme or discussion, please do share. So, Tommy, I'm just going to read Tommy's response to a follow up to what he was saying before out. So, we were talking about ego. So, Tommy says, another way to see this is that the ego contracts our experience when something arises that we don't like. Absolutely. In this way, we become less sensitive to our environment, and feelings can be, sorry, it just scrolled up. And where am I? And feelings can be repressed into our unconsciousnness. The counter to this is to bring presence to each moment, especially when something arises that we feel a tendency to avoid. The unique self-realization reveals that stories and thoughts do not automatically take us away from presence, connection, or aliveness. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so true. Is, when we're coming from a place of ego, we're thinking about our own perspective. We're not necessarily seeing the bigger picture or what's kind of best for, let's say, everyone involved. And yeah, presence, connection, and aliveness. And we've talked before about how ego can get in the way of connection. I think that's one of the things that came up last week. So Lauren, you said, I've done it twice and your hair is as long as mine now. So yeah, mine's like super long. Mine's like it's still going. Yeah, your hair's as long as mine now. So freeing and liberating. So we're talking about, I basically, for anyone that's just joined, I was saying that I've always had this thought that I would love to, well, not love to, but I would be very kind of open to the possibility, or it's crossed my mind to like shave off all my hair, just as a way of like releasing some of my ego, or, any attachment I have to like my visual appearance. So Marula shared, for me, it's stopping dyeing my hair and letting it be grey. This makes me face the fact that I'm getting older. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are doing that. And I think also the other thing is with like dyeing hair and stuff. I used to dye my hair when I was younger, like just a kind of maroony colour. And the reason I stopped was just kind of the maintenance, and also, yeah, just wanting to be kind of more natural. And I think it's so much easier to live in a way that's, and obviously, if anyone likes doing things like like dyeing the hair, give me one moment, guys. I am drinking a like sleep tight tea. So yeah, Mel kindly said, I hope you're feeling better this week. It was because I was unwell last week, and unfortunately I still am. I'm feeling a bit better, I think, than I was last week, but I kind of got better and then got worse. So I'm doing okay. I'm here, and I think it's not as like painful to speak this week, but I might need to pause to like cough, or I might need to have a little intermission to blow my nose potentially. But we'll see how I get on. Um, but the thing I was saying is that for anyone that does, specific beauty or self care rituals that make them feel good about themselves and that you enjoy doing, I don't think there's anything like wrong with that if that's what you feel called to do. But for me personally, I feel like I've found that the less things I have to do for like maintenance, in terms of cost, like resources, time, energy, effort, the easier it is for me. And obviously that's kind of, that's normal because it means that I'm not spending like time or money on things. But, I've got friends who, for example, get their lashes done or get Botox and things like that. And then they have to go again in whatever amount of time. And I think for me that sounds like a lot of work. And whereas for them, I think they feel the kind of exchange rate, which is something I talk about a lot, is worth it. So for those of you, especially because as we've got a few people who are new to me today, I talk about the exchange rate of things constantly, and it's been something that I've been speaking about for the last like year or two, but more and more recently. What I refer to when I talk about the exchange rate is that everything has an exchange rate. So, if you want to wake up early and go to the gym, the exchange rate there is that for some people, having the extra sleep and not going to the gym and not exercising is the better exchange rate. Whereas for others, it's a higher priority or it's more important or more valuable to get up and exercise and start your day on that note. So the exchange rate is really variable for each of us and for loads of different situations as well. So I think I was like about to cough, which I didn't, so I was catching up on the comments. So yeah, hi Mel as well, by the way. So David said, Sinead O'Connor, when she started as a musician, she had to have long hair to sell records, so she shaved her head instead. Yeah, I actually think I have heard that story, and it's yeah, it's really interesting. And guess what? Like she's been really successful and done really well. Mel, I hope you're well. I'm just kind of going through the comments, and Mel's came up again. So Marilla said, I'm from Cypriot descent and all the women in my culture dye their hair, so I had to be prepared to stand out as different. I think that's such an interesting thing. And actually, for a lot of us here in this space, I'm sure many of us are doing things differently to the way that our parents or our family or our culture kind of do. Like for me, for example, I've obviously I was made redundant a couple of months ago, and I'm almost certainly not gonna kind of go back to the working world in a traditional sense. I'm working on a kind of community voluntary project at the moment, but it's something that's quite big and quite exciting, but it's not paid. But I really feel that I'm kind of living my purpose between doing the Insight Timer stuff and that, and I've had a few other things just kind of come up organically as well. So because I really do believe that when you're living from a place where you're in service and you're coming from a good place, that actually um things will line up and things will fall into place. So yeah, so anyway, so that's kind of, my family, I guess, like that I'm probably one of the first people to kind of do that at my age. I basically have been joking about about retiring and having a retirement party. And I get mixed responses. So from people who are very close to me and also believe in like manifestation, spirituality, and putting purpose over like finances. Um, I've had a lot of support and positivity, and then from other people, they're like, "Oh, can you really afford to retire?" And it's not about that. Like obviously I'm not going to literally like retire and never do anything to sustain myself ever again, but it's a bit like, Melissa was talking about the other night, that it's about reframing things and looking at things in a different way. And um, you know, like some of the stuff that you were saying, Melissa, was the exchange rate concept came up for me. So obviously, you've moved back home, and but the exchange rate of that, having the freedom, not having to do a job that where you don't feel valued or appreciated, and they don't let you put the heating on, is it's more valuable for you to have that freedom and safety than it is to have like the paycheck that you were getting from it. And I feel very similarly. So, but there's been a couple of interesting things that have happened. Like I'm on an advisory panel for this local um sort of creative culture thing, and I kind of said yes to this a while ago. It was kind of, just it's not like a paid role, although when I go to meetings, they give me like £25 for my time for a couple of hours. But when I've done freelance work previously, my day rate has been £800, which people have paid me. So comparatively, if I was at this meeting for like 3-4 hours, my time is technically worth a lot more, and I have been paid that in the past. But that's kind of not why I'm doing it. It's because I believe in culture and community and connection and passion. And actually, when I signed up for it, I didn't know that we were paid like anything. But one of the ladies from there very kindly asked me recently to co-facilitate this event with her on Friday. And that's something where it is like I'm paid for my time. And again, I don't know the amount and I haven't asked because, well, I mean, sorry, I have asked, I don't know the answer yet. But she basically, I mean, I would have done it anyway, to be honest, even if it wasn't paid, just because it's a new opportunity. And I was very flattered that she thought of me. And she literally said, she thought of me because she saw one of my Insight Timer sessions, a bit of it, um, on YouTube, because I basically record these and then I pop them on there. So for anyone who's missed any of them and wants to catch up, I basically post that content there as well. And I'm in the process of, which has been a bit of a learning curve. So if you guys are trying to upskill or learn anything new or trying anything new out recently, add it in the chat because I'm very much on a massive learning curve at the moment and I'll share some of that with you. But if anyone has anything they're currently learning or trying to learn or wanting to learn, please share in the chat and we can have a little conversation around that. But I'm trying to figure out like all these like editing softwares and audio cleanup and things like that. And I'm trying to basically I like upload, a full length video from these lives and then it gets cut automatically into like shorter clips and then I need to like, add a bit of music to it and things like that. So there's maybe 2 of them on my YouTube so far. So I'll be adding more of those. So hopefully, even if you miss one of the sessions, you'll be able to just see like the short snippet of the insights from here. And the one thing that I've been thinking about doing these lives is 2 things. First of all, sometimes when I watch the content back, I really find myself like actually lit up and really, passionate and in flow and really enjoying it, which I absolutely do. And for those of you who are new here, my level of energy and my like passion is much, much harder and much stronger, sorry, and more vibrant when I'm not unwell, which I am at the moment and I was last week. So otherwise generally, yeah, I'm on slightly better form than I am when I'm under the weather. And then the other thing was that when and what was I saying? Oh, and the other thing I realized is that these sessions are the only time where I spend literally an hour and a half solid doing one specific thing with like no distractions whatsoever. So I guess the other times I might do that is if I go to a cinema. Um, Although, I might still like have a little whisper or talk to somebody that I'm with as well in the middle of it, or, pop out to the bathroom. Whereas when I'm doing these sessions, I'm literally sat here like mostly for the full hour and a half, and I'm present. And that's actually a really interesting thing to note because in every other area of my life, I'm generally like buzzing around trying to do a million things at once. So let's catch up on other comments. Yeah, and we will also talk a little bit more about, being different in from like our culture and our families, because I think that's a really interesting topic too, and what that means as well. So Tommy said, we spend the best part of our lives earning and saving money to enjoy a questionable liberty during the least valuable time. Yeah, and that's what people say quite a lot. People say, if you want to travel or you want to do things, like do it while you're still mobile and able to. Because, when you're in your 80s or 90s, you might not be able to take a long haul flight or go on that ski trip or that cruise or whatever you wanted to do. So, yeah, it's definitely about balancing, like building a future, but also like saving for, like, living in the moment and enjoying your life while you are here and present. Um, there's another theme actually on that note that's been coming to mind for me, or just something I've been thinking about generally, and you guys can tell me what you think about this, and then I'll catch up on the chat. So I'm going to share this as a little question. Have a think about it. Add your comments in, and then we'll circle back to the other comments we've got coming through. So, what do you guys feel or think about, all of us generally are kind of people interested in spirituality, consciousness? I think a lot of us are quite open-minded around like things like manifestation. We think there's more to the world than the material world and what meets the eye and what we can see and feel. We know that we're here to do more than just kind of earn money and go on holiday or whatever else like the rat race entails, and that cycle of like escapism. We know a lot more about like purpose and I think, like, I've noticed for me, for example, my biggest drivers are, like, helping people and, like, purpose and, passion and living in flow and things that for me have more sort of like meaning. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy luxury or pleasure or like going on a nice holiday or going for a nice meal or things like that, because I do, but I just think my priorities are the other way around. And I've been thinking about basically if someone like me or people like us generally, um, whether it's possible for us or whether we can be happy in like friendships or relationships, but particularly relationships. And I think because you obviously can sometimes like end up living with people and stuff with people who don't share the same values. And I hear a lot of conflicting things on this. So I'd be interested in all of your thoughts. I'm going to have a sip of this tea, and it's a little reminder, as I always do, for anyone that needs to hydrate, please do. Right. So, yeah, we've been speaking about yeah, I mean, and I will, and I think I'll come back to that topic, but I'd be really curious to hear all of your thoughts or any experience that you personally have. My personal view, and which I'll elaborate on in a bit, is that I've always thought that if it doesn't get in the way of my spiritual growth or my personal development, then it isn't an issue if someone else doesn't think or feel the same as me. However, what I am starting to think is that, if, for example, fundamental things like if you believe in God or if you believe in like the universe or something greater than us, not just like from a scientific standpoint, um, and if you believe in like reincarnation and things like that and karma, I think that can be quite a big thing because that can fundamentally affect how you live your life. Like if you don't believe there's anything bigger or greater than us and you don't believe that um if you believe this life is just it, then it's not surprising that people who feel that way, think about just like short-term pleasure and sort of, wanting to like enjoy life as it is because in theory, if there's nothing beyond our material world, then nothing else really matters. Like money is important, like material objects are more important. So yeah, that's just a couple of thoughts I've been having. Um, and I had an interesting conversation around this earlier today, but I'm going to go back to the comments. So, Melissa says, I'm learning how to compose music. Huge learning curve, but I love seeing the progress. That's so cool. How long have you been doing that? And yeah, what inspired that? I'd love to know more. And Lauren is you're teaching yourself double bass and found 3 double bass student books in a thrift shop yesterday. I love it. That's awesome. And Lauren will chat as well at some point, I'm sure. I still so I was talking to Lauren. I hope you don't mind me saying this, Lauren. We message occasionally, and Lauren's great, and she's quite friendly with a lot of the teachers on here as well. She's like a core part of the Insight Timer community. Many of you know her. Her name on here is Peter Burke, and I was messaging her and I was saying that I realized that we speak a fair bit, and I feel like I kind of know you, and she's always so kind and warm on my Insight Timer sessions, and I feel like, I know her like soul and her energy, but I said I have no idea what you look or sound like. And so she was saying that, and I haven't had a chance to reply yet, but she was saying that she'll like email me a picture of her. But because you mentioned the grey hair, I was like, I've got like one more piece of the puzzle in terms of what I'm imagining. So yeah, that's exactly because you said the grey hair earlier. That's the only kind of information that I have. Um, okay, so so Melissa said she's using a MIDI and garage band, so it's all digital. That's so cool. I'd love to hear how that comes out. And yeah. Oh, and you got a violin yesterday, Melissa. Great. Okay, so Melissa, you started it this year, maybe a few months ago, and you wanted to create music for your meditations. That's amazing. That's so, so cool. And when you do, like, please make sure you let us know which ones have your new music. I feel like because I'm quite a new teacher on here, this is live session number 9. I've managed to do one a week very consistently for the last 9 weeks, I guess. And it's such a learning curve in terms of learning how to like add music and sort the videos out and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'm I've still got a little bit of a way to go on that because I'll be honest, my first 2 audio tracks that I uploaded, I had a colleague from the job that I was made redundant from because it was a video content agency. So they're very good at like cleaning up audio and video. My colleague basically like cleaned up the audio and I sent him a music track a royalty free one that I wanted to put under it and he just like did that for me. So I need to learn how to do it by myself, although he said he's happy to help me. So has nobody got any thoughts about what I shared around, us as sort of more like spiritual and conscious led individuals, sort of being in relationship with or engaging with people that aren't of a similar kind of like energy or vibration? No? Okay. Well, yeah, let me know if you do. Oh, so you wonder the same. So yeah, I've heard mixed things. So one of the things that I've heard, and I actually watched a video where Eckhart Tolle talks about this as well. But I think it really depends. But then the thing that I always hear is that if one person starts to kind of change and grow and evolve in that sense, then sometimes it can inspire that in the other person. But I think for me, what I'm realizing is where anything like any sort of change or evolution we have is as long as we don't then let that affect and influence our relationships in terms of we aren't trying to push our agenda or what we're trying to do onto other people or like force other people. I think if they're not ready, I think that's where it can be an issue where you know if we're on a journey and we're on a path and we're trying to tell people that we care about to also do the same thing, this is where the whole like staying in your lane thing comes into play. um for those of you who remember about my guinea pigs and what popcorning is, they're doing that a lot right now. So popcorning is basically where a guinea pig, imagine this, the guinea pig, they'll just kind of fly around, jump in the air like that. Like that's literally like they'll just kind of jump and it's like they're flying around. They do it when they're very excited and when they're really happy and yeah, and it's sort of like an uncontrollable movement and where they're like jumping for joy essentially. So I don't know why, but Pumpkin has been popcorning so much this whole evening. Um, and he's like doing it right now. But he was doing it earlier as well. It's very funny and very cute. It's like the equivalent of a kid jumping for joy, but just if that child was a weightless and fluffy. So one of the things that I do in a lot of my sessions is I'll kind of share what I've been reading recently and potentially read an excerpt or find a page randomly depending on how we feel and where the mood takes us. So one of the books that I've been reading, which you guys know about, is Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and I read a little excerpt from that last week. I'm gonna see, and I did save something that I've been reading more recently to kind of share with you guys today. So one of the things that let me just get to the right page. I'm on a Kindle and I'm trying to figure out how I can go to the page before. But okay, let's see. Right. Okay. So he talks about basically how the frontal lobe can is kind of the creative center of the brain. So anytime you're using your frontal lobe, whether it's like creating music or art or something that where you're in flow, that's one of the first like the easiest ways to like rewire the rest of your brain, because when your frontal lobe is activated or engaged with something that you're kind of passionate about, it switches off the other parts of the brain that like overthinking or stressed out or whatever else. So one of the things that he says is, because obviously, we all like try to improve or like learn new habits or practices or things like that. So with regards to the frontal lobe, one of the things he says is that when we set aside time and private space to think about a new way of being, that is when the frontal lobe engages in creation. We can imagine fresh possibilities and ask ourselves important questions about what we really want, how and who we want to be, and what we want to change about ourselves and our circumstances. Because the frontal lobe has connections to all other parts of the brain, it is able to scan across all the neural circuits to seamlessly piece together stored bits of information in the form of networks of knowledge and experience. Then it picks and chooses among those neural circuits, combining them in a variety of ways to create a new mind. In doing that, it creates a model or internal representation that we see as a picture of our intended result. It makes sense then that the more knowledge we have, the greater the variety of neural networks we've wired, and the more capable we are of dreaming of more complex and detailed models. To initiate this step of creation, it is always good to move into a state of wonder, contemplation, possibility, reflection, or speculation by asking yourself some important questions. Open ended inquiries are the most provocative approach to producing a fluent stream of consciousness. So, this is like some of the questions that he mentions. So, for example, what would it be like to dot dot dot? And feel free to like get me to repeat these if you want to write them down and just think about these in your own time or journal or whatever. So the second question is, what is a better way to be dot 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 question mark. What if I was this person living in this reality? Question mark. So, what if you were, insert the name or type of person of someone that you kind of aspire to or would like to be like. And also, who in history do I admire and what were his/her admirable traits? So that's kind of, another thing that you can start thinking about and creating kind of new sort of thought processes and connections by imagining these things. Because obviously, all of us here know this by now that when we think about or imagine things, we're getting closer to achieving that thing. It's like, even if you put something in the chat, your odds of actually like doing it or following through are much higher. So what he says is that the answers will come naturally. The answers that come, will naturally form a new mind because as you sincerely respond to them, your brain will begin to work in new ways. By beginning to mentally rehearse new ways of being, you start rewiring yourself neurologically to a new mind. And the more you can remind yourself, so he says like it's like re-mind yourself, the more you'll change your brain and your life. Whether you want to be wealthy, or a better parent, or a great wizard for that matter, it might not be a bad idea to fill your brain with knowledge on your chosen subject, so you have more building blocks to make a new model of the reality you want to embrace. Every time you acquire information, you're adding new synaptic connections that will serve as the raw materials to break the pattern of your brain firing the same way. The more you learn, the more ammo you have to unseat the old personality. So I found that really, really interesting from the point of view of just, thinking about things and asking yourself these questions can influence your ability to then like achieve or change in the ways that you're looking for. So Tommy has shared, and I think this is probably in response to the question that I had earlier. I think we should seek to try to understand other people's perspectives much more deeply, particularly those that are most different than your own. Try to take the opposite perspective. I feel that's why we are where we are. So much polarity and division. How can we heal ourselves and the world if we can't see another's point of view or beliefs from a compassionate standpoint? Don't tear things down. If you don't understand it, be curious, be interested. Don't let your first reaction be to tear it down or judge it. Yeah, I think that's a really true point. And you know what's interesting about that? I don't know how much you guys know about this, but there's been a lot that I've heard recently. Like I don't use any social media other than I use YouTube for my content. I post the live sessions that I've done. The kind of older retrospective ones go on YouTube. And also there'll be a lot more short form content on my YouTube channel going forward. But I aside from that, I don't use Instagram, I don't use TikTok. I occasionally watch things on YouTube, but very rarely. But the interesting thing that I heard is that there was a girl who posted this video, I think I saw it on LinkedIn or something, and she was saying that she was watching this video and she sent it to her boyfriend, and he was sat next to her, and it was this video of this woman who'd been like stood up by her date or a guy, her boyfriend or something, who'd said he was coming over, and then like several hours later she was waiting and he still hadn't. And then she was like, she said to him like, "Oh, look at the comments." And so basically when she looked at it, all of the comments were like in support of the woman, saying like, "Oh, how terrible, I can't believe he did that to her, blah blah blah." And then when she looked at it on his phone, the comments were completely different. So all of the comments were like, "Oh, has she not heard of a hobby? Like, she needs to get a life, blah blah." So it was from like the man's perspective, or justifying what the guy had done. And she thought that was so interesting, and like she said, no wonder we're so divided if this is like, just, I'm sitting next to this person and this is the comments that I'm seeing and the comments that he's seeing. I was really, really shocked by that. I don't know if anyone else is, or if other people know about this or have other examples of it. But it's crazy, isn't it? I'm glad that on Insight Timer we all see the same comments and the same kind of feedback and notes. Um, I'm gonna have a little like ad break. So if anybody is new here and doesn't know me yet or isn't following me, I'd really appreciate that. Um, and also, if anyone has got any value from anything I've shared today and wants to support me on my journey as a teacher, and also, obviously, this is my main source of income at the moment, amongst, the other voluntary work that I do, and having been made redundant, um, I would really appreciate any donations, kind of no matter how small. Everything kind of helps me to get more like equipment and, do things to improve my lives, hopefully for you guys. So yeah, if you're in a position to support, or you're feeling like generous or called to donate, I'd really be very grateful for that. But other ways that you can support me, if you can follow me here, share my details and my live sessions with people close to you who you think might benefit. And normally when I'm not ill, they're a bit more structured. And also, I've also got a goal at the moment to reach 500 subscribers on YouTube. So, I'm kind of in the process of creating like shorter form content, and I'll be kind of creating original content to go on there as well outside of Insight Timer. So you can find information on that on my link tree. And if you're on an Apple device and you don't want to lose 30% of your donation to Apple, you can also donate via my PayPal. There's a link in my link tree there. So yeah, any support is greatly appreciated. Um, so Tommy has shared, so true. You can tell the same story to 5 different people in the same room, and they'll all have the completely different reaction / perspective. That's how unique we all are. Yeah. So Tommy, what I'm speaking about specifically is like somebody's looking at Instagram and they're reading the comments that are coming through on their phone, and their partner is next to them, and the woman is seeing, yeah, Mel, I can. So I will share it in the chat. My YouTube channel is, there's a link in my link tree in my bio, but let me just type it in the chat. Yeah, so I'm Priyanka Rose 1111 on YouTube. We love the angel numbers, obviously. So yeah, I've put that in. So yeah, Melissa said definitely hit the nail on the head. The algorithm does that. Yeah, that's the word. The algorithm does that to keep us divided and to make people feel that beliefs are the majority. Yeah, that's their beliefs are the majority. Yeah, it's so true. I think because I don't use it loads, I'd forgotten about the word algorithm, but it's literally, it's really true, and that's why I don't generally use these platforms or use the look at the comments much. But the thing is, I actually, I'm not being totally honest. That's not why I don't use the platforms. I use the platforms because, sorry, I don't use the platforms because I found myself once I was standing in a queue a couple of years ago, and I found myself just reach for my phone and mindlessly open Instagram, and I just thought, hang on, I'm not even consciously doing this. Like, I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing. So I decided to delete it because I just thought this is not I don't want to be doing anything just on automatic or on autopilot. That's not good for me without thinking about it. So I deleted the app then. Then I briefly used to use it in the browser version on my phone, but it's like really annoying to do that. If any of you have ever done it, you can't like scroll through for ages, which is quite a good thing actually if you're trying to break the habit. And then once when I reset my cookies on my browser or something, it just logged me out. So then I just actually thought like, oh, do you know what? I yeah, it's just kind of time for me to not use it and be done with it. And actually, I'm not missing out. The only annoying thing is sometimes people will send me Instagram videos, and then I will I'll kind of occasionally not be able to look at them because you can sometimes see them, but I don't think I'm missing out on anything major. And if it's really important, they can like FaceTime me and screen share or show it to me when they see me. But generally speaking, nothing that anyone's sharing on Instagram is really that important. Tommy, thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. That's very kind of you. And yeah, just when you guys contribute to me or donate, it kind of makes me feel like and aside from obviously you guys all being here, it's really very much appreciated and does make me feel like valued and like I've got something interesting to say, hopefully. And sharing the time with you is really, really wonderful for me. But when you guys donate, it really means a lot, and it really helps me to know that I'm sort of connecting with you and that some of what I'm saying is landing. I was on a live yesterday actually where the person who was hosting it, she was really interesting. I didn't catch her name. I did screenshot it because I wanted to look up her other content. But she Tommy, are you? Oh, you're going to bed. Okay. Fair enough. Well, good night, and thank you for being here, and thank you for the donation. Really appreciate it. And all your wisdom as always. I feel like Tommy is like my co-host sometimes. um, and what was I saying? So yeah, I was on this live, and the teacher was saying that when we there's a couple of teachers that say things about giving, which I really agree with. So Catherine Ramati always says that when you contribute to like anything, when you kind of make a donation or you give where you can, you're creating a vacuum whereby what you give you receive back to you from the universe. And so whenever I see any sort of like charity donation things, particularly if I can, I will like often, even if I just give a really small amount, just to kind of build that like good karma. And also just because I feel like I'm in a position where, generally speaking, like I can afford to give a pound or a dollar or whatever it is, or a couple of pounds. So like, why not? Um, and so this teacher yesterday she was saying that like, if you believe that you have enough, which we all want to be in the mentality and the vibration of, oh, we have enough or we have more than enough. So she was like, if you feel that you have enough, if you feel like you actually you can afford to like spare a dollar, then if you feel like you have enough that you have like more than a dollar, which obviously she was like we all do, then she was like she was like, I don't care if you like donate to me or not, but she said if you have enough, you're like you're practicing that right now, or in other situations. And this, me saying this, is like in other situations where that kind of thing comes up, like if there's like a charity or if someone like needs help with something, um and us being open to like helping others generally is us saying that we have more than enough. I talked about this on a session that I did. It was the week before last, where I talked about how I was sort of like accidentally scammed in Paris, but I thought it was like in a nice way. And I thought that again, the exchange rate was that for 25 euros, I got to feel like I'm a nice and kind person that's open to helping people when they need it, even if they were possibly like misleading me. So I don't know whether any of you remember this or were there for that session, because I did it during the day at like 4 p.m., which is a very unusual time for me. Um, but that was a really kind of interesting story and an interesting perspective. So my sister and I were there for like the Joe Dispenza retreat that got cancelled last minute because the French authorities don't fully agree with his teachings. But that's another story. Hi, Jennifer. Lovely to welcome you here. Thanks for joining us. Um, yeah, so we were in Paris for this retreat, and then which didn't happen. And then someone that we met did something really kind for us. Like we got talking to somebody who was studying abroad from like Columbia University, I think, and he we were out at a bar, and we invited him to just like hang out with us because he was on his own, and he was a really lovely guy. And when we were leaving, there was like a Mexican taco restaurant attached to the place we were at, and he basically said to us, as he'd already eaten there before and then come to the bar, and we'd been at the bar and we were going to go and get food. And he was like, "Oh, I'll wait with you guys just to make sure you get into the taco restaurant, okay? And then I'll head home." So he did that really kindly. We're only outside in the queue for like a minute. And then he said, "Oh, if it's okay with you both, I'd love to buy you a plate of tacos, like just to say thanks for like, hanging out and like being really nice." And so he basically just like, ordered us a plate of tacos. He remembered very sweetly that my sister was vegetarian. And so he just ordered us a plate of tacos, like tapped his card, paid for it, said goodnight to us, and then left. And then obviously the restaurant like made the food. And it was really kind. And my sister and I were both just like really appreciative. And we are just like, oh, the beauty of like humanity and kindness. And it was like obviously we'd we'd also been nice and made the effort to like connect with him, and otherwise he would have just been sat on his own. But it was just such a nice thing. And then the next day, and I've talked about this, so sorry, like nobody actually replied to say that they've heard this story before. So some of you might be hearing it the second time, but oh well. And basically um the next day it was really super super rainy, and we were waiting. We had to like to the point where we couldn't walk like 2 minutes in the rain. We had to like just sort of hide under like a shop front to wait for the rain to stop. It was insane. We had umbrellas as well, but like this rain was no match for the world's best umbrella. And so we called an Uber, and we had to wait like 15 minutes for it, and because the weather was awful. And then a couple of people kind of came and went under the awning while this rain was going on. And then at one point this guy kind of came up to us, and he said, he was like, "Oh, do you guys speak English?" And he was like a middle-aged guy, decently dressed, looked like a sort of typical like tourist. And he said, "Would you speak English?" And we said, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, thank God." And he was like, I'm like visiting Paris from Canada, and I was just near the Eiffel Tower with my wife and kids, and my wife put our bags down for like 2 minutes just to like take a photo for literally like 2 seconds, and then someone like took our bags. And he sounded really genuine, and he said, "We're staying near like Euro Disney, and the only way to get there is a train. It's 35 euros." And I was like, "Oh, where are your wife and kids?" And he was like, "Oh, I told them to wait at," like he named some French place that I didn't know. And he was like, "I told them to wait here so that then they don't get wet in the rain." And then he was like, "Are you able to?" He was like, "I'm really sorry to ask. Like, are you able to help me at all?" He's like, "I'm visiting from Canada. I work for UBS. Like, have you heard of UBS?" And then he was like, "I can pay you back like tomorrow," or he said, "I've just been to the Canadian embassy," and he was like, "I'd be really grateful, and I can pay you back and give you a bit extra as well," and like blah blah. And he said, "I'll give you guys like a kilo of chocolate each or whatever." And I felt called to help him, and it was largely because of the nice thing that had been done the day before um by the guy Jack that we were hanging out with. And I felt like I wanted to, because in that moment when someone else did something nice, I kind of felt like, oh, do you know what? I want to pay it forward, and um I want to do something nice for someone else, etc. And then this opportunity arose, and I thought, right, I'm gonna help this person because I feel called to. And so I had 25 euros cash on me. That's the only cash I had, and I gave it to him. And basically, um, he took my details and he said thank you so much, and he said that basically he was like, I'm really sorry to ask, but if you could help me with a little bit more by any chance, just so that I don't have to humiliate myself further by kind of asking other people. And I said I don't have, and this was a lie, but I said I don't have any cards on me. I think that was my boundary. Like, I wasn't going to go to a cash point with a stranger. But ultimately I also felt like I'd helped enough at that point. And so anyway, never heard from him again. But the later that night, it kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, I left that situation and I was like, was this real? Wasn't it? Like, did I get scammed? And I called my mum actually, and I said to her, I was like, this just happened. I was like, I don't know if it's real or not. And she said, listen, like, don't worry about it. 25 euros isn't a lot of money. And, like, if you've helped someone, great. Like, you did what you feels right for you, etc. And then, anyway, later that night, I Googled that story and that situation. And has anyone here heard this story before from my live like 2 weeks ago? I'm not sure. But anyway, I Googled it and basically someone, like, there was like an exact almost like word for word thing. Let me see if I can find it. I've got a screenshot of it. Um, so, um, let me see. Just trying to find it. Let's see if it is anywhere. I'm trying to search my images for the word scam. Let's see if it works. iOS has changed and I'm not as familiar with it. So I don't know if I don't know if I can find it, but ultimately somebody said that basically they were like, hey, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this or like if it's a scam, but I've had like two guys come up to me in recent weeks in Paris, saying, like, telling me this story. And one of the guys like said he was Swiss and that he works for UBS, and that he was like robbed and that he needs like money for a train. And he offered us a kilo of chocolate. He offered me a kilo of chocolate if I help him and, like, give him money or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, like the UBS thing and the kilo of chocolate, like it sounds like way too much. Like, it's the very same like story, or it might even be the same guy. And the guy didn't sound Canadian, but I was like, I didn't know. I was like, he works in finance, they move around. Like, he had like a general sort of international accent. Um, so basically I realized it was probably a scam. And part of me felt uncomfortable about it. Part of me that night was like worried about it, or maybe something like felt icky. I talk about the icky feeling sometimes, that, there's situations that make us feel icky, like when we feel we've been misunderstood, sometimes when there's a bit of like conflict or friction with someone we care about and that we're close to. Hi, Melanie. Lovely to see you. I just saw your little image in the bottom. And if there's anybody else here who I haven't said hello to, and who hasn't said anything in the chat, then also hi. I don't see everyone's like pictures, so I recognize some of them from people that I know. Yeah, so basically, and I looked at it like, so that night I kind of was a bit uncomfortable, but then I tried to think about it differently. So the ways I thought about it was, first of all, one thing is, like, if this person is out on the street, like even lying or scamming, like trying to get 35 euros for a train, then, or, probably it wasn't for a train, but, they probably need the money. And, like, I hope that it's helped him or whoever he shares that money with. Like, I hope that it's useful. And, you know, yeah, I don't agree with the way it was like taken from me or obtained, but, mm, you know, it it could be worse, right? And the other thing I was thinking is, like, if I was going to get like robbed or scammed, frankly, not that it makes it fine, but like this is kind of the nicest or most innocuous way for that to happen. So, I get to feel like I'm a good, kind person. Give me a second, I need to cough. So hopefully I'll be better for next week. But yeah, I got to feel like I'm a kind of nice person. Do you know, I feel like I'm gonna need to go and get like a lozenge or something. Bear with me, guys. I'll be right back. I need to cough. Hey guys, back. I have a Bronco Stop lozenge in my mouth, which I don't know if any of you have ever tried it, but it's in my opinion one of the best things for like a cough that I've ever used. So it's but I don't know if I've tried the syrup, but particularly the lozenges are just really, really good. They have a lot of like natural ingredients. I think they've got like thyme and some other things, but they seem to always work when I've got a cough. So yeah, I was saying that obviously if I was going to get scammed or robbed, that's kind of the nicest one of the nicest ways for it to happen. And that what I kind of said on my session 2 weeks ago is I said that there's an exchange rate here. So the exchange rate is that for 25 euros, I get to feel like I'm a good person. I get to feel like I'm open to helping people. And, you know, my conscience is kind of clear in that I feel like I did the right thing. The only kind of caveat I have, the one thing that didn't sit well with me is that what if this situation going forward makes me feel like next time someone asks me for help or next time someone, um, you know, wants to like ask me for money or something, I say no, or I'm less likely to say yes because of this situation. So yeah, that's just a kind of thought. So Lauren, you said some very sweet things, and thank you that I cultivated good karma. And then Tobias, you said something similar happened to you in Vienna with 20 euros. Was your story like very similar or slightly different? And has anyone else experienced anything like that? Or like, you know, how did you feel afterwards, Tobias? I feel like I'm really happy that I had the kind of slightly more positive I guess view or feeling that I had. So yeah. And I see we've got some other people that have joined. Thank you for joining, guys. Nick, welcome, welcome. Who else do we have? Johnny. The pictures kind of circulate. Oh, Lotus, hi. We've got people from all over the world. Um, so yeah. So I was just talking about a situation that happened a few weeks ago in Paris where I got a little bit scammed, but ultimately had like a positive viewpoint on it. Um, so one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys, I'm just gonna get it open. So those of you who've been to my sessions before, you know that I like to kind of read little insights to you and share some things with you. So so Lauren said, totally resonate. I had that happen with a friendship breakdown. So consciously tried not to withdraw because of it. Oh wow. So Lauren, you're saying that you had like a friend potentially like mislead or slightly scam you, is that right? If you want to give us more context, feel free. Just or if there's any like lessons in there for us. So, um, there's another book that I really, really recommend. So obviously I've talked about the kind of Joe Dispenza Breaking the Habit of Being You, and we read a little bit from there. So another book that this is going to sound like an unusual read, but I really recommend it for anyone who has any interest in like spirituality, consciousness, and also potentially dating. Um, so it is called The Tao of Dating. I'll put it in the chat. Hmm. And it's a book that I read many years ago, and I feel like it should be a lot more popular than it is. It's kind of mainly targeted at women, although he was going to release one for men, or he did, I'm not sure. But it's more about actually like Taoism and spirituality than it is about dating, but the two kind of intertwine. I'd say it's more about like how we live our lives, and there's a bit of a crossover in how that translates into dating. So, one of the so yeah, there's like loads of things he talks about, and um, I want to share them because I just think that there's some really amazing insights in here, and we've got 10 minutes, so it's a good kind of thing to cover. So he basically talks about that one of the things that we want to achieve, or that he talks about it from the Taoist perspective, is one of the things that we can achieve, which will help us to be more successful in all areas of our life, is the concept of something called no self. So it can be useful and liberating. So basically, if you don't kind of see yourself as like, so ultimately the concept of no self is that, you know, that we're like a river and that there's no fixed version of us. So Buddhists call it anatta, or no self, and they say that nothing in this world has a fixed self. Everything is in flux, including you. So the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus also once said that you never bathe in the same river twice, because it's never the same river and it's never the same you. If you were to look at a river, close your eyes and open them again a few seconds later, every water molecule will have moved. The banks will have rearranged themselves a little bit, and it will effectively be a brand new river. So he basically talks about the things that we can do to achieve this kind of no self concept. And he says that, let me offer another way to look at no self as a concept that can be both useful and liberating. Since this book is about dating, let's think about it in a dating context. What would happen if no self were true? And I think this also circles back around to, what we were talking about earlier about releasing ego. So he says, well, you wouldn't be afraid of rejection, and you wouldn't be concerned about what others thought or said of you, since there is no you. As a result, you'd be willing to approach and speak to any man you fancied. This would vastly increase the range of men you'd be able to date. Since there's no fixed self to hurt, you'd be less afraid of getting hurt in a relationship and more focused on the enrichment you can derive from the connection. When you do end up dating a man, you'd be less likely to feel insulted or slighted by any of his actions, since you can't take any of it personally. Your ego would not get in the way of a good connection. And when the time comes to part, you'd be less likely to feel hurt, rejected, or abandoned, um, since there's no self to be hurt, rejected, or abandoned. Suddenly, this no self idea seems real handy. Is it really true? Who knows? Can it enrich your life though? Absolutely. So he talks about ways that we can bring more anatta, or no self, into our lives. So meditation's number one. And I'm just gonna like talk about the headline elements of this rather than each one. So he talks about meditation. He mentions a few examples and shares like a link to one. And then he says do yoga. He's like, I like to think of yoga as a moving meditation. The more vigorous the practice, the better. Why? Because you'll be so busy breathing, holding, and balancing, you'll have very little mental space left for such trivial matters as the ego. And so the other thing he says is like using a reminder technique. So essentially having a reminder to keep your kind of thoughts like in line with what you want to do, etc. So For no self, you can have an elastic wristband, a ring, an ink mark on your right thumb, anything that can serve as a reminder to live the concept of no self during the day. So I think no self really is about like kind of releasing ego or not coming from like an ego place. He also says this number 4, experience flow. So psychologist Mihaly, and then he spells the surname and he says in brackets, pronounced Csikszentmihalyi, although it's spelled like Csikszentmihalyi. Um, anyway, this psychologist talks about flow, that optimal state in which the task is matched to the ability. So you're stretching yourself just a little bit so the task is challenging, as opposed to boring without being frustrating. So, experiencing flow is things like when you're reading and focused, when you're like painting or creating music or art, those sorts of things. So everyone has a different version of, ways and methods where they find flow. So number 5 is travel. So of all the methods listed above, this may well be the most potent. Much of what you consider your fixed identity is anchored in your environment, your dwelling, your workplace, the streets you usually drive, the supermarket you usually shop at, the drink you usually order, the people you usually hang out with, the clothes you usually wear. Remove all those hooks, and a new version of you, or no you, because we're talking about, the no self concept, has a chance to emerge. The more removed the locale from your everyday experience, the more likely you are to let go of the fixed notion of self. So, and this bit's interesting. He's like, there's one method that's guaranteed not to give you any results at all, and that's doing what you've been doing all along. Nothing changes if nothing changes. This book is about getting results by taking action. No action, no results. You've taken one big step towards getting results by purchasing this book and reading this far. If you really want to test the idea of no self and reap its benefits in your life, commit to doing at least 2 of the above steps now. You'll be glad you did. So does anyone have any questions or any comments on anything I've read so far? And if not, there's a little bit that I'll carry on to kind of close with. So he talks about who we really are. We've talked about how you are not some static entity known as the self. Let's say you agree with that. So what are you then? I'm just reading Mel's comment. Sounds like Dr. Joe keep doing the same thing and nothing changes. Yeah. And that's what we've covered that recently as well. So anyway, so what are you then? We've got a lot of options here. So let's try this one on for size. You're a conduit for abundance in the universe. To say that you are a conduit means that abundance is already present in the universe. You're merely the instrument it passes through. Since you are the conduit, you do not get to own any of the abundance, you're just the pipeline. Expanding on that idea, you're also a conduit for right action, or Te. Te is the implementation aspect of the Tao. It's pronounced Tao and Taoism, but it's spelled Tao and Taoism. And I always, when I'm reading out loud, forget that. So, Taoism is far from being a passive philosophy. It's about taking right action, so in consonance with the Tao, so in tune with the natural way of things that it seems effortless, the way water flows downstream. When you become one with the flow of the Tao, your actions take on a lightness, grace, and effectiveness that they wouldn't have when they were emanating from the ego. You abolish struggle. Another idea to ponder has roots in every ancient spiritual system. In the Hindu tradition, it's called Advaita, which is Sanskrit for non-duality. It simply means that there is ground of being, a basic essence from which all beings in the universe arise. Plainly stated, it is about how we're all cut from the same fabric. Rationally, this is easy to grasp. We're all made up of the same molecules and atoms that make up the rest of the universe. The chair you're sitting on, the air you're breathing, the clothes you're wearing are all made of the same molecules of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, etc. By extension, you can imagine that there's also a spiritual essence that makes up all beings and the whole of the universe, and you are made of that. If this seems like an abstract concept to you right now, don't worry. Monks spend years meditating on this so they can fully grasp their oneness with the universe at a visceral level. As long as you're interested in grasping this concept and applying it to your life, you will. Perhaps someday you'll start a regular meditation practice if you don't already have one, and really feel the meaning of Advaita in your bones. In the meantime, the passage below from an ancient Hindu text is one of the best I've encountered in explaining how all beings are made of the same essence. In it, King Aruni is explaining the concept of non-duality to his son, who has just returned home from his long studies. So, and this is the last bit I'll kind of end with. The bees, my dear son, prepare honey by gathering the nectar of different trees and reducing that nectar to a unity, so that the nectar from each different tree is not able to differentiate, I'm the nectar of this tree, and I'm the nectar of that tree. In exactly the same way, my son, when all creatures merge into reality, they are not aware that we are merging into reality, no matter what they are in this world. Whether they're a tiger, a lion, a wolf, a boar, a worm, a moth, a gnat, or a mosquito, they all merge into that reality. That finest essence here is the self of the whole world. That is reality. That is the self. And thou art that. So, yeah, that's what I'll kind of end on. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to kind of share, or any closing remarks before we wrap up? From my perspective, I'd just say thank you guys all for being here. And if you are able to support me with a donation, I'd be very, very grateful. I think, yeah, we're all conduits for abundance in the universe, and very much so they say that we get back what we sort of give. So if anyone has gotten any value from today, or is in a position to support me financially, I'd really appreciate that. And if you're not called to do that in this moment, or you're not able to, you can also support me by following me on Insight Timer if you don't already. And also, as I mentioned earlier, I've got a goal to reach 500 subscribers on my YouTube channel. So that I'm going to start posting kind of more original and shorter form content on there. Little insights, me reading little things, some of the kind of clips of the wisdom and sort of highlights from these sessions as well. So I'm in the process of kind of learning how to do all of that. And thankfully, my kind of previous employer is very kindly letting me use some of their software at the moment to do that. So I haven't had to buy that yet myself. But thank you everyone for being here. You can find the links to my YouTube channel and my kind of bio and everything else. In my bio, in my link tree. And if you are on an Apple device and you don't want Apple to take a 30% cut, but you do want to support me, I also have alternative ways to support me via PayPal in my link tree as well. So that's kind of a nice way to do that if you're able to or would like to. And thank you everybody for being here. And I look forward to connecting with you at many of the lives coming up. I think Rob Gregerson started a live at 10, so I'm going to jump over there. And also, if Blossom's still on, dip in and say hi there. So we can all move over to one of those and hang out and say hello. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your time. Next week, when I'm hopefully not ill anymore, it'll be another slightly more structured session. We'll have a topic in mind and I'll share what that is ahead of time. So we've had previous topics include kind of specific communication skills around connection and building community. We've had the topic of sort of serendipity and how to be open and create more serendipitous moments in your life. We've had roadblocks to community and connection. So these will kind of carry on that theme. And it's kind of loosely, the theme is connecting, consciousness, spirituality. But overall, it's just a way for us to like hang out, have a nice time together, kind of share our insights and wisdom. And if anybody ever needs any like specific support or feedback, or has any questions, or just wants to feel heard, this is also a space for that. So please do, come like as you are. If you need some help, we're here. So yeah, thank you guys and have a lovely rest of your evening. Take care. Bye. And thank you, Jennifer, for the donation. And Tommy's left as well, but thank you, Tommy. Good night, guys. Bye.